Welcome, everybody. Hi, everyone.
I
Hi. Welcome to Contra Costa Tail Spinners Story Swap for January 2025. And it's wonderful, wonderful, wonderful to see you all here. And I will invite everyone to mute yourselves, a little housekeeping, unless you are the teller. And we can thank our tellers like this or however, but with the mute on and and also many people like to put some appreciations in the chat, and it's really nice if you do that in between the stories. So I'm going to serve as host tonight. Also here with us is Dana Sherry, the co-host, and Sally Holtzman, the former co-host and former host, and Bobby Kincaid, a former co-host, and especially I want to acknowledge, we don't always remember, acknowledge Marnie Berenson, who is our incredibly great tech host. And she's hiding behind the SAC logo right now, I think, but very important behind the scenes. So we are going to get started with our featured teller, and we're just super thrilled to have him with us tonight, and that is Willie Claflin. And I think for many of you, Willie needs no introduction, but he did send an introduction for the email, and I'll mention some of the things in it. First of all, he's from, is it Vermont, Willie?
New Hampshire
Maine?
originally, but I lived on the coast of Maine for years and years and
Maine,
years.
Maine. Okay,
Maine, yeah.
so we are just very lucky that at a certain point in his life, after living in New England, it seemed like a good thing to him to head out here. And we claim him now because he is known all over the country and the world, and also just one of our absolute local treasures. And he now lives in the East Bay, in Contra Costa County, in fact. That hasn't been too long, but in El Sobrante. So welcome, Willie, to this, right now, no, I think we may be the only story swap right now in Contra Costa County. So
I'm so glad you told me about you. Yeah.
So Willie is he's a musician, he's a storyteller, he is a thinker and a writer um, and a teacher, and in everything he does it in an just unique way. And I just want to say, I mean, I will never forget sitting at the Sierra Storytelling Festival and watching Willie with friends of mine who never, with their children, who don't go to storytelling events, and watching him captivate everybody at every age level. And I've really never seen anybody do it like Willie. So whatever age you are, Willie is going to entrance you tonight, I'm quite sure. So welcome, Willie. Please tell us.
Thanks so much, Liz. Yeah, thanks a lot. Well, I never know really until I start telling what I'm going to tell, which drives people nuts, especially at festivals. They want to know, what will you be telling? And then I change my mind at the last minute, or most likely I just don't remember what it was I was going to do. But I was unpacking, we're still moving into our new house, and I was unpacking a whole bunch of school papers from the old days. And I used to go out to the East Coast every year. I moved out here in '84, and I used to go back to Cambridge, Massachusetts, where I lived for years, and do a 2-week residency at a school called the Shady Hill School. And they had a unit on African folk tales. And the teacher, who was an American griot, he left after I'd been there a couple of years. And they said, well, Willie, would you take over the African folktales program? And I did for 20 years, every time I would visit. And I would always say, you might want to have a griot. You might want to have, somebody other than a kind of a Pete Seeger African folk teller, but they said, no, we want you. So I know all these African folk tales. Um, so at the risk of appropriation, I thought I would just tell you one of my favorites because I basically never tell these at festivals. Um, and this is a version of the bojabi tree, which many of you may know. Um, there was a terrible drought in the land of the animals, and it hadn't rained for a very long time, and the leaves dried up, and there was nothing to eat. There was nothing to eat for the animals, and even the animals that ate other animals had nothing to eat because they were all kind of skin and bone. And usually when I was doing this in the school, I would teach this got a song in it, and I would teach the kids a song at the beginning. So even though we're on Zoom and we're not fourth graders, I thought I would teach you the song before I get into the story. So the song just goes like this. I'll break it down in pieces, and you can be my echo from wherever you are. It goes, Bojabi tree, oh, please send down the fruit to me. Bojabi tree, oh, please send down the root to me. So if you just be my echo, first half just goes, Bojabi tree, Bojabi tree, Bojabi tree, Bojabi. This way you'll wake up in the middle of the night and it'll drive you nuts because you won't remember the whole song. And then the second half goes, oh, please send down the fruit to me. Oh, please send down the fruit to me. So the whole song goes, Bojabi tree, oh, please send down the fruit to me. Bojabi tree, oh, please send down the fruit to me. And I used to tell the kids, okay, let's do it once more. And this time, just take a big breath of air before you sing. Bojabi tree, oh, please send down the fruit to me. So, as I was saying, this is a story from Gabon. There was a terrible drought in the land of the animals. Nothing to eat. The grass all dried up and died. The leaves on the trees dried up and died. And it was clear they were going to starve. And they did what they always did when there was a big problem. They had a meeting and they sat in a big circle. The big animals, small animals in a big circle. An elephant, he was in charge of the meeting, maybe because he was the largest, and he would point to someone with his trunk when it was their turn to speak. And he said, my friends, we have this terrible, terrible problem. There's nothing to eat. And I don't know how we're going to survive. Does anybody have an idea? And Rabbit raised his paw. He said, I remember when I was a little rabbit, I remember my grandma telling me there was a magic tree. And it grew in the middle of the forest and had these red, round, juicy, delicious, ripe fruit. And all you had to do was call the tree by its name. And if you called it by its name, it would drop the fruit down. And they all survived because called it by its name, it dropped the fruit down, and they all survived until rainy season came again. An elephant said, that's wonderful. What's the name of the tree? And Rabbit said, well, that's the problem because I don't remember, and my grandma is forgetting a lot of stuff, and I just have no idea what the name of the tree is. The elephant said, does anybody here know the name of the tree? And he looked around the circle, the big animals, the small animals. No one remembered the name of the tree. And Rat, over there on a little rock, Rat said, I know who remembers everything, though. I know whose job it is to remember everything. That's Mbama, the boa constrictor. Her job is just to remember everything. She lives about a 2 days trip down the river. Why don't we send someone in a boat down to Mbama's house and find out the name of the tree? There was still just enough water in the river to float a boat. So Elephant said, that's a great idea. Let's send Gazelle because she's the fastest and she also has the fastest boat. So down the river went Gazelle until she got to Mbama the boa constrictor's house. She knocked on the door. Mbama came to the door and said, can I help you? Yes, said Gazelle, we need to know the name of the magic tree that grows in the middle of the forest with a red, round, juicy, delicious, ripe fruit. Said Mbama. It's the bojabi tree, bojabi. Thank you, said Gazelle. And she got back in the boat and she started paddling back to the land of the animals. But halfway back to the land of the animals, this big wave came rolling down the river and it knocked over her boat, knocked Gazelle into the water. She almost drowned. But finally, she tipped the boat back over. She climbed back in and started paddling again. But she realized that she'd been so scared that she was going to drown that she'd forgotten the name of the tree. And right back there in the land of the animals, sitting on the shoreline, waiting for the answer, all of the animals saw Gazelle coming and said, "Hey, Gazelle, what's the name of the tree?" And Gazelle said, "My friends, I'm so sorry. I forgot." And Elephant said, "What are we going to do now?" And Rat said, "I'll go." And everybody said, "Yeah, send Rat. Send Rat. He's quick when he thinks, he's quick when he talks, he's quick when he moves. Send Rat." So Rat got in his little boat and he paddled down the river till he got to Mbama the boa constrictor's house. He knocked on the door. Mbama came to the door and she looked at Rat. She was extremely happy to see Rat. She had not had breakfast. He was a warm, bite-sized morsel. And she was opening her mouth wide to swallow Rat when all of a sudden she remembered what her grandma had told her. "Mbama, if someone comes to the door asking for assistance, it is completely inappropriate to eat them." And so she closed her mouth and said, "May I help you?" "Yeah," said Rat. We need to know the name of the great big tree that grows in the middle of the jungle with a red, round, juicy, delicious, ripe fruit." Mbama said, "You guys already asked me that. Gazelle already asked me that. It's the Bojabi tree, okay? Bojabi, go away. Don't bother me again." "Okay," said Rat. Rat got in his boat. He paddled as fast as he possibly could to get out of there. But the same thing happened. Halfway back to the land of the animals, a wave came rolling down the river, knocked Rat right out of the boat. He almost drowned. Somehow, he managed to grab the rope to the boat and swim over to the shore, dump the water out, get back on the boat, start paddling back to the land of the animals. "Let's see," said Rat. The tree, the name. Um, the name. It begins with a B. It's a baobab tree. No, it's like a name. It's like a name. It's Joe. It's Joe Bob. It's Joe Bob, which wasn't quite right. And he knew that not quite right was wrong and wasn't going to do them any good at all. And so right back there in the land of the animals, sitting on the shoreline, all of the animals saw Rat coming. They said, "Hey, Rat, what's the name of the tree?" Rat said, "My friends, I'm so sorry. I forgot." Elephant said, "We don't have any time left now. What are we going to do? We have maybe 4 or 5 days left to live. What are we going to do?" And he looked all around the circle of animals sitting there, the big animals, the small animals, but they were so tired. They were so hungry. They didn't even have the strength to raise their heads. And they'd all just kind of given up. They all just sat there for a long time. And finally, Turtle said, "I'll go." And the animal said, "Oh, no, Turtle, you can't go. You're too slow. You're slow when you think. You're slow when you talk. You're slow when you move. You're too slow. You can't go. There's no point." And Turtle said, "But I think everyone should have a turn." And the animal said, "Well, of course, Turtle, everybody ought to have a turn. Of course, we all know everyone should have a turn, but there's absolutely no point in sending." "Okay, go ahead." So Turtle thought to himself, "How can I remember?" And he went to his mother and she said, "Turtle, it's easy. Put it in a song. That's how the people remember. Put it in a song." And Turtle said, "I don't know how to make a song. And Turtle's mother said, "Turtle, you just do it because I told you to," which is very good advice. So Turtle said, "Okay." And he got in his boat and he paddled very slowly down the river. And all the animals said, "Oh man, he's never going to even get there." But he did finally got to Mbama the boa constrictor's house, and he knocked on the door. Mbama came to the door and she looked out. She said, "Can I help you?" Turtle said, "We want to know." And Mbama said, "You want to know the name of the great big tree that grows in the middle of the forest with a red, round, juicy, delicious, ripe fruit?" "Oh," said Turtle, you read my mind." "No," said Mbama. "You people keep coming down here over and over and over again and asking me the same question. What is the matter with you?" "It's the bojabi tree, and do not come back and do not ask me again." And she slammed the door. Turtle thought, "Oh, I, I better make up a song quick." But making up something quick was hard for Turtle. He thought, well, I got the name. So he started singing. Bojabi, 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 boja. He liked the song. Bojabi, bojabi, boja. Kind of short, though, thought Turtle. Needs another part. That's when he put in the part that goes, bojabi tree. So then we had this whole thing. So he had bojabi, bojabi tree, bojabi, bojabi. He liked it so much he was standing up in his boat. You know, bojabi, bojabi tree, bojabi, bojabi tree. "Oh," said Turtle, "needs a rhyme." And that's when he thought up the part of, "Oh, please send down the fruit to me." Now we had the whole thing. Bojabi, bojabi tree, oh, please send down the fruit to me. Bojabi, bojabi tree. Started moving around during a dance. It was a very slow dance. It was kind of like bojabi, bojabi tree, oh, please send down the fruit to me. Bojabi, boja. But you should never stand up and dance in a boat. The boat capsized. Turtle fell into the water. But luckily, he was a turtle. Just flipped the boat right back over, started paddling back to the land of the animals, singing that song. Bojabi, bojabi tree, oh, please send down the fruit to me. Bojabi, bojabi tree, oh, please send down the fruit to me. And right back there in the land of the animals, sitting on the shoreline, waiting for the answer, all of the animals heard Turtle's song as he was coming. By the time he got there, he didn't have to teach him the song. They'd heard it so many times already, they already knew it. And they all went out to the middle of the woods and they started looking around and looking around and looking around and looking around. And finally, they found it, this huge tree that grew way up to the sky. And they made a big circle around the tree and they all held hands or paws or whatever they had. And they said, "Oh, beautiful tree, please send your fruit down." But the tree didn't move. And Rabbit said, "Well, we could try whining. That's a good idea." So they all went, "We don't have any food at all. We want fruit now." And Turtle said, "You have to use the name." And so they all began to sing. Bojabi, bojabi tree, oh, please send down the fruit to me. They all sang like that, except for Rhinoceros. Rhinoceros sang like this. Bojabi, bojabi tree, oh, please send down fruit to me. Because everyone sings in their own special voice. And that was Rhino's extremely special voice. And no sooner had they begun to sing than the fruit started falling out of that tree. Red, round, juicy, delicious, ripe fruit. Oh, the animals hadn't eaten in so long. They started to eat and eat and eat and eat. And they ate and ate until their stomachs were full. And they lay down and fell asleep. And while they were asleep, a gentle rain began to fall. It rained all night, rained all the next day, rained all the next day. rainy season had come back, and the grass turned green and the leaves grew back on the trees. And the animals decided one thing. Before they forgot the song again, before they forgot the name of the tree, they better teach the little ones that song as soon as they could. And so they taught the little ones that song right away, made sure they all knew it by heart. Bo jobby tree, oh, please send down the fruit to me. So if you're ever lucky enough to get to Africa, if you're ever lucky enough to get to the country of Gabon, and you hear that song, you will know where you are. You're in the land of animals. And that is that.
Oh, thank you, Willie.
Thank you.
Yeah, if you could keep Marnie, keep the spotlight on Willie for a minute. Um, you know, here in the Bay Area, we've been enjoying the sunshine. It's been lovely, beautiful sunshine, but we kind of need some rain, and we certainly need rain in other parts of California. So I just feel like we can't let you go without inviting anybody who wants to, if you will, Willie, to any of us to unmute, and if we could sing that song with you one more
Oh,
time.
sure. Yeah.
Okay.
And the nice thing about singing the song is, which I discovered years and years ago, and I'm sure you all know this, the kids would mostly remember the stories that had songs in them, because they'd remember the songs and then they'd remember the stories that went around the songs. So um, if it sticks in your brain, you can tell it. So yeah, let's all sing it together. It's kind of fun.
So I hope somebody else besides me will unmute themselves. I see Jane's unmuted.
Y'all, everybody
Okay, it's
unmute.
not required, but all right, Willie.
No, but Baba Jamal used to say, um, if almost everybody sings, that's good. If everybody sings, magic happens. So, Bo Jobby, Bo Jobby tree, oh, please send down the fruit to me. Bo Jobby, Bo Jobby tree, oh, please send down the fruit to me. Bo Jobby, oh, please send down the fruit to me. Bo Jobby, Bo Jobby tree, oh, please send down the fruit to me.
That's a Zoom chorus. Wow.
That's almost like a round.
Yes.
It is almost. I was thinking about that as I was singing it. I thought, is there a way to, yeah.
But I mean,
Yeah.
on Zoom, it really sort of like a round.
Yeah, because
Right,
because
yeah.
lag, on Zoom.
The delay.
That was the
Yeah,
worst,
right, the
that was the
delay.
worst delay I've noticed on Zoom in a while, but I mean, I haven't done this very much. But anyway, thank you, Willie, and thank you,
You're
everybody.
welcome.
I think that was fun, even if it was a little off. All right.
That was great. Wonderful.
And Willie, please, Willie has
Oh,
interesting things coming up. He's teaching a class at
oh, thank you
State
for
and other
reminding
things.
me.
Yeah.
So, Willie, if you want to put, Eleanor,
Yeah, thank you, Lee.
put your class at Stagebridge on, and
Yeah,
so
I always forget to do this, but luckily I have people like Liz to remind me.
and
Um,
Eleanor,
yes, and Eleanor. I will be doing I think a notice went out to the Storytelling Association, but also it is through SAC. I mean, it's through Stagebridge. I'm doing a really unusual series of workshops that I've never done before with a fascinating collaborator of mine from Maine who's coming out for the first session. And it's establishing and creating a curriculum for the imagination. She and I, as educators for years and years, have decided that there should be an imagination curriculum. In other words, there's physical education, there's now emotional education, certainly intellectual training, but there's very little training to develop the muscle of imagination. And you'll hear people say, oh, I'm not very creative. And because she's a really good teacher in a progressive school, and because she also has done a lot of research, she's running a PhD on on neurology, brain neurology, and brain states. And she and I have developed a whole series of exercises and games to gain access to imaginative material. It's sort of magical in a way. And then take those kind of what Einstein called thought experiments and then turn them into actual stories and paintings and stuff. So it's going to be essentially adults. It'll be a curriculum for adults, but it actually will be probably implemented first in 5th and 6th and 7th graders in her school. So it's a whole series of explorations, of experiments, curiosity experiments, visualization experiments. And just one quick example. One of the anecdotes that we'll use as a starting place was I had an art student years and years ago. I mean, a little kid, 5 years old, and we were all painting, and the kids would make mistakes, bloppy painting, make a mess, and I ruined my painting. And this girl had done a beautiful picture. She accidentally blopped a huge purple blop in the middle, and instead of bursting into tears, she said, "Wow, what's that?" To her, it had appeared in her painting and now became the focus of the painting. It's what I call improv mind, where whatever weird thing happens, you not only accept it, but you say, that's perfect. So instead of thinking, oh, I wrecked it, it just, oh my God, what is that? So it's experiments like that and what comes off those experiments.
That sounds
Um,
wonderful, Willie. So the information of how to find out about it is in the chat.
three Saturdays starting on the
February
20.
22nd.
Thank you.
All right. All right. So, Jane, are you ready? Okay. Our next storyteller is going to be Jane Cole, who has been around for a long time. And welcome, Jane. Tell us one of your lovely stories.
Thank you. Well, think North Sacramento, 1959. I was quite something in second grade, or so I wanted to be, as you shall see. My family and I went to San Francisco to Chinatown, and I was enchanted. My sister Karen and I went up and down Grant Avenue in at least 100 stores, and we were thrilled. Now, at this time, trade with China was cut off. And so the kind of merchandise that I was interested in all had little tiny made in Japan stickers stuck all over the bottom. Well, I saw a beautiful little doll. She was just wonderful. She had silk robes and a beautiful headdress with all kinds of silver and gold ornaments. I was thrilled with her. Now, this brings us to a tradition in California schools, at least at the time, called show and tell. I loved show and tell, especially my turn. In show and tell, you got to go up in front of the class and show something and tell your classmates about it. Well, I couldn't wait to show my doll, and finally the day came. So there I was, and finally it was my turn. I came up to the front of the class, I held up my beautiful doll, and I was hit with the realization I had no decent presentation. Oh no. All I could say was, I bought her in Chinatown. Oh dear. Well, I needed a better backstory. I needed more details. I needed some excitement and history and drama. And think that's where I got in trouble. Well, I stood there and I had a blank moment for a while. And then inspiration struck. I launched into a story before I could even tell what was coming out of my mouth. I was telling my classmates all about how my dad went to Pearl Harbor right after the Japanese bombing. And he worked to raise, to float, and salvage the ships that had been bombed and sunk in the harbor. And it was a terrible job, and he worked so hard. And one day, when he was in Honolulu, he saw this beautiful doll, and he bought her for me. And then he brought her back across the big Pacific Ocean and gave her to me in Sacramento. Well, I was aware that I had sort of mushed together some of my embellishments, but I was totally unaware of the timeline of Pearl Harbor, World War II, and my birth date. Well, you can imagine that I was excited and thrilled when my teacher, Mrs. Baldwin, said, the teacher in the other second grade class would like to have you come and give your presentation to them. Ah, I thought, I have arrived. I have talent. I have something that my classmates will benefit from, their exposure to my excellent story. No one in our second grade had ever been invited to go talk in another classroom. I was quite something. Well, I walked over by myself to the other classroom and went in the door, and the teacher ushered me to the front of the classroom. And I looked around, and I didn't really know those kids. And I was standing there, and I had my doll, and I wasn't quite as inspired as I was the first time. So I was casting about, and I thought, okay, well, okay, so more of World War II. So I explained how the Zeros came in over the ridgeline and bombed and strafed all the ships in the harbor, and they sank, and there were big explosions, and there was oil on the water, and it was burning, and there were men and sailors, and they were dying, and it was just horrible. And my dad came right after the bombing, and he helped float those ships if they could, and salvage the damaged ships, and get the sailors' bodies out of the old mangled up ships. And it was horrible. It was grisly. And my dad was a hero. And then there I was at that moment. How do I tie the doll to my dad's story? And this time, when I launched into the part where my dad saw the doll in Honolulu and bought her for me, I realized, uh-oh, I wasn't even born yet back then. Ooh. So there was a pause, and then I launched into a very abbreviated, rushed version of, okay, so, and then He brought the doll back across the great big Pacific Ocean and all the way to me in Sacramento and gave it to me. Now I could go into the part where my doll was very special and I couldn't really let other kids touch her, but you could look at her closely and see her beautiful robes and her ornate, beautiful headdress. Right about then, I chose to look up from my doll at the teacher, and I realized that while my little fellow second graders might have been not do the math on this, that teacher certainly had. Oof. I tried to make my exit as quickly as possible. There were no question and answer period, no phone call home, no parent conference. But I learned my lesson about telling big windies, as my mom called them. I thought I was quite something in second grade, and it turned out that I was quite something, but not in the way I had expected. And as I walked back to my own classroom, there was a little song floating around and following me along. And it was from my mom. And it goes like this. Lily, 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 lily. Lily, 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 lily. Lily, 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 lily. Lily, lily, lily.
Oh, thank you, Jane. Well, now we know that you've been a very powerful storyteller since you were very, very young, second grade. Thank you. Thank you. That was lovely. Um, all right. Our next storyteller is Bobby Kincaid. And Bobby, I think has shared with us before a whole series of stories, because Bobby's not just a storyteller, but an author. She's been putting her stories into collections, and I think we've got a new one. So welcome, Bobby. Can't wait to hear it.
Thank you, and all the people at the swap that love stories, as I do. This was a long one in the making, but I finally got a handle on it. It's called Fire the Hunger. And why would I even write a story about fire? Well, about 30 years ago in our neighborhood, the fire came down the hill 2 blocks from our house. I panicked. I packed coats, phones, the animals, and left and went to Marin County with a friend. And then about 2020, 22, two huge fires happened in Santa Rosa where my daughter lived, and she housed her friends, and some of their houses burnt down. And now we have this raging fire down in LA. It's just hideous. And I wanted to find out where fire came from and why people had so many stories with it, about it, and who fire is. It's a pretty devastating personality. It could also denote power. It is power. So when I was a child back in Colorado, my dad was a lumberman, and he worked for this small company up at Ute Pass in a little tiny place called Woodland Park. It wasn't even a city yet. Now it's huge. And he would cut the timber, and we lived in these little kind of Quonset huts. And for a fire pit, it was huge. And it was all scraped around the edges, and you could put anything in there: tin cans, shoes, garbage, whatever you wanted, and it would burn up. And that was so the bears wouldn't get it. Well, my father had to retire because restrictions came on the forest and too much timber was being cut down. So we moved to Colorado Springs. But every single summer for the rest of my life and some of my adult life, we went camping. And camping was the thing. And it's where I got to see fire. My uncles and my dad would bring the firewood and it was before camping. They had camping places all over. This was free range. You made a big hole, you put your firewood in there, and then you started it. And while the women, this was after fishing all day and we had some fish, the women would start the fires, fry the fish up, and the men would sit around the fire telling all their fishing stories and their hunting stories. But because it was summer, the women could come and join in. Well, us kids, I don't know how many, lots of us, would gather around to hear these fishing stories and these hunting stories. And the fire would go up, and it was just so magnificent. Little sparks would go up in the air, and it was warm, and everybody was having such a good time. And then after the fire had burned down, these lovely ambers were left, and my dad and my uncles would put dirt on it and fire on it, and sometimes we got to help. So that was my introduction to safe fires. But before that even happened, how did all this start about fires? So I looked on the internet. I must have went through hundreds of stories, and I decided on 8. And this is kind of an introduction to it. And I named my series Fire the Hunger. And uh, and uh, and uh, the good old Mother Earth created the world, and she made it peaceful and in harmony, and the trees and the animal cousins and the humans all lived very comfortably during the day. And they loved it when the sunset was coming, the beautiful yellows and the oranges, and if a cloud was up, the silver in it. They loved that. But as soon as the sun went down behind Mother Earth, oh, the fear started. It was dark. They could hear noises. It wasn't warm anymore. They feared for their lives. They huddled in their little dens and there wherever they were, and they waited till morning. Well, morning came up round Mother Earth, beautiful sky, warm and welcoming, and they all had fun. They really loved it. Well, the humans, of course, wanted fire because it was so special and they wanted that warmth. And they had seen fire. It came down as lightning sometimes during the night, and then the trees would explode with fire. But by the time they got there, it was too hot and they had to wait. And when they waited, the fire disappeared. And other cultures had seen the lava flow out of these volcanoes, and it was beautiful, it was warm, but they couldn't touch it. They couldn't even get near it. And by the time they could get near it, it had cooled down. So the humans and of course the animal creatures wanted this magical thing that would explode up and give them warmth. And the humans decided that the gods had them in those volcanoes because they could see the sparks coming out in the lava. So one of the humans yelled, "We want fire! We want fire now! We got to have it right now!" Well, the gods weren't going to appease him because they had that secret fire and they made jewels for their friends or something. So poor humans and the poor cousins went out looking for fire, but they were ignoring what a great, great African god Khan had said to them. If the humans and the animal cousins discover fire and use fire, it'll break the harmony between them. And as I tell this series of stories, you'll find out why our animal friends are so afraid of the humans and why we should be afraid of fire. Thank you very much. It was an honor.
Thank you so much, Bobby. And the fire is on our minds always,
Yes.
especially right now. So um, I loved what you said. Who is fire? What is the personality of fire? Um, that's a profound question.
We will find out.
Okay, I look forward to it.
All right. Thank you.
Um, Well, I'm going to tell a story. And we seem to have an African theme going. So thank you, Willie, for starting that off. Um, okay. A personal note to begin with. About 2 weeks ago, I became a grandmother for the third time. I have two granddaughters, but they live in Portugal, so I don't get to see them very much. But my firstborn son, my firstborn child, just had his first child, and he lives right in San Francisco. So I got to hold my new grandson on the day he was born. And I realized, other than I have two children, and I held them on the day they were born. In my case. And those are, I think, other than that, I don't think I've ever held a child the day it was born. So that was so special. But the most special thing was seeing my son with his son and seeing how thrilled he was. And of course, his partner as well. But for me to see, my son and his son. And I was reading a book that's been on my bookshelf for a long time around, just as this was happening, that actually was a Jungian dream and archetype kind of book. And in this book, the author was referring to many different archetypes in mythologies of the world and how the parallels that they have with dreams. And that's interesting, but he particularly mentioned this one creation myth that really struck me, and I want to share it. It is from it's from Nigeria. So Nigeria is one of the biggest countries in Africa, biggest population, most important economically, and also has, hundreds of languages of different people. And this story is told by a people who are called the Nupe people. And it goes like this. In the beginning, the great God, the creator, created first 3 living things, kinds of living things. He created tortoises. He created human beings, and he created stones. Those were the 3. And he saw his creation and he saw that it was good. And these 3 beings lived good lives, but they lived lives very different from ours now. And this story explains how that changed. Because in those days, whether it was the tortoises or the humans or the stones, none of them died. They would just get older and older and older, and then they would go to sleep and wake up and they would be newborns again, young again. And this was how life went on. Now, the tortoises, after a while of this, yes, their life was comfortable, but something was missing. And so they realized that they had a longing in their hearts to have children. And so they went to the great God and said, "We really want children. Can you please make it so that we can have children?" And the great God said, "No, no, I am the creator. I have the power of creation. I created you, but I did not give you permission or power to create. So, no." And the tortoises were very sad. And also they'd been scolded, and nobody likes that. But they left. They went away without saying anything, but in their hearts, that longing to have children was still there. And time went by, and they decided, we're going to go back and ask again. They went back and asked again, "Can you please, please make it so we can have children?" And the great God said, no. They went away again, but yet that feeling did not go away. And so they went back a third time. Please, please, may we have children. And the great God said, what is this? Why are you always coming to me, just bothering me, asking about having children? What's going on? Don't you realize if you have children, they will have children. Yes, you'll have something lovely, but they will have children, and those children will have children. And pretty soon there will be so many tortoises everywhere that there'll be no food, there'll be no room. If you want to have children, you need to understand, if you want to have children, you must die. And to the great God's surprise, the tortoises said, we accept that. If only we can see our children grow up, we will die. And so the great God granted their wish. And the tortoises started to have children, and the tortoises began to die at the end of their lives. And the tortoises were happy. And the human beings saw the tortoises and saw how the tortoises loved having children. Of course, maybe not every single tortoise had their own children, but as a community, they raised the next generation and the next and the next. And the human beings saw this, and in their hearts came a longing to have children. And so they also went to the great God and said, we've seen the tortoises and we've seen their children, and we want to have children. Please make it so we have children. Why are you all asking for children? Don't you understand? Don't you understand? If you want to have children, you will have to die. And the human being said, we want to have children that much. As long as we can see, if you will let us see our children grow up, then we will die. And so the great God granted their wish. And that is why, from that day to this, the tortoises have children, they grow old and they die. The human beings, we have children and they grow up and we grow old and we die, but we pass things on to them. And only the stones never went to the great God to ask to have children. The stones were not interested. And that is why they say, that is why stones never die. But on the other hand, if you think about it, maybe they never really lived. That's the story. Great. We have had one of our storytellers who we expected today is not able to join us. And I am seeing that Eleanor says, I can tell a short trickster story. That would be wonderful. Thank you, Eleanor. Okay, Marnie, can you spotlight Eleanor Clement Glass? All right.
All right. Well, long, long ago, in a great forest in India, there was a tiger. This was a fierce tiger, a tiger that was huge, a tiger that had claws as long as my fingers, and they were very sharp. This tiger could roar, and all of the air would just shimmer. And he would roar very loudly. Rah! All of the animals would scurry away back to their homes and they would hide. They were so frightened that the tiger would come upon them. The other thing the tiger did was he patrolled the entire territory that was his kingdom, and he knew he was king of the forest. That tiger would think about who he was going to eat the next day. And sometimes he would not roar. He would just stalk the animal very quietly behind him until he was close enough to pounce on the little animal, and then he would eat them. Well, the animals were absolutely terrified of this tiger who called himself the king of the forest. One day, there was a little fox, a little red fox, and that fox was trotting along on one of the dirt roads through the forest. And pretty soon he smelled the tiger. Is that tiger stalking me? He said, think. And then he had an idea. He drew himself up off his front legs until he stood as high as he could. He whirled around and he saw the tiger. And he said to the tiger, "Tiger, what are you doing?" Well, the tiger said, "I am going to eat you for lunch." "I beg your pardon. How dare you? Did you not get the memo yesterday?" "Well, what are you talking about? A memo?" "Yes, everyone in the entire forest received the memo that you have been deposed and I am now the king of the forest." The tiger said, "No, that cannot be. Do you need proof of this?" Well, the tiger shook his head. "Follow me." And then the little fox started trotting down and went all the way to the meadow, but constantly checked back. The tiger was hanging back, quite confused. He said, "Come on, come, tiger, come close. I want you to see this. See the proof. Come close to me." And that tiger started walking closer and closer until they almost looked like one, the fox and the tiger. When they got to a beautiful meadow, it was green grass everywhere, and a beautiful river was flowing through the meadow, and there were herds of deer, and the deer were drinking at the water, and they were sunning in the sun, and they were just everywhere. The children deer, the baby deer were playing in the forest. And that fox looked at the tiger and said, "Do you see? Watch this. Come closer." The tiger looked. Said the fox. Well, one of the deer looked over, and his eyes got wide, and it started to run and run and run, and that all the deer looked over and they started running in every single direction. They were absolutely terrified. They ran away until there was no deer left in the entire meadow. Did you see how the animals fear me? They were terrified of me. Do you need more proof than that I am now the king of this jungle? I saw it. I saw it with my own eyes, but I do not believe. This cannot be. Do you need more proof than that? Well, follow me. And the little fox started trotting in front of the tiger. "Come on now, come follow me. You want this proof?" And the tiger started following closely and hovered over that fox, wondering what was going to be the proof this time. Well, soon they came to a clearing. There were big boulders, and this clearing was surrounded by beautiful, lush trees. Everywhere there were monkeys. There were monkeys sunning on the boulders. They were picking at each other and grooming one another. There were children monkeys who were swinging through the trees. mothers were holding their babies and rocking them. And the big, big monkeys, they were laughing with one another and they were gathering food. Do you see this? Yes, I see this. You watch. And that fox started to make noise again. One of the father monkeys looked up and he looked over and he saw the fox and the tiger and whoa, 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 whoa. He started to set the alarm. Oh, 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 oh. All the monkeys started gathering one another. The babies were grabbed by the mothers and they went up into the trees. All of the monkeys, all of the monkeys were letting one another know it's time to go hide in the trees. And they did. And soon there was no one left at all in the clearing, not on any of the boulders. And if you looked up, they could see no monkeys in the trees. They had hidden so well. The fox turned to the tiger. Did you see them run in terror from me, the king of the forest? Yes, I saw that. I see that you are the new king of the forest. And the tiger began to back away. The fox drew himself up and said, you are to leave my forest right now and never, ever come back into my territory. And the tiger said, yes, indeed, you are king of the forest, and I will take my leave. Thank you.
Let's see. Thank you so much, Eleanor. My favorite part was the look that the fox gave the tiger, like, he just was really, you nailed that fox there. All right. Well, we
Liz, may I
often
make
have
an
a,
announcement?
huh?
May I make another announcement? May I
Yes,
make an announcement?
yes, you may make an announcement. Yes, we have time tonight. Yeah.
Well, I wanted to say that I'm going to be taking Willie's class and I'm so excited about it. I hope you'll join me. Go to stagebridge.org and look for the catalog and how to register. But there are two other great storytelling classes that will be in starting in February also. Joel Ben Izzy will be offering a story lab, helping you to polish any stories that you have, and as well as working with the other students in collaboration to help each other to polish our stories ready for performance. There's also Wayne Harris, who is working at the Marsh, and he is doing a personal narrative storytelling class called Moments in Our Lives. And that will help you to maybe mine some of those great moments in your life and create stories out of them. So I hope you'll consider taking one of the storytelling classes at Stagebridge.
Thank you, Eleanor. So on top of being a storyteller at the Asian Art Museum, Eleanor is on the board of Stagebridge. If anybody, Stagebridge is in Oakland and these classes are in person. So if you're in our area, please consider taking these wonderful classes. I saw that our favorite poet who joins our group from time to time, Storm, has joined us kind of late, but sometimes Storm has a poem for us, and I'm just kind of checking in to see.
Yeah.
He said he might be ready.
Yeah, I'm ready now. I can do it.
You are, all right.
Yep.
Okay, so Marnie, if you could spotlight Storm. So Storm is coming to us from the East Coast. Massachusetts, am I right?
Greenfield, Massachusetts, yes.
Greenfield, Massachusetts. So welcome. You win the prize, I think today, Storm, for came the furthest
All right.
through the magic of Zoom.
And this is one that I think more and more of us can relate to. I looked for one that was fairly short and somewhat upbeat, and I do a lot of political things, but I felt like right at the moment people needed a chuckle. So, searching for my keys, what's this? Something seems to be amiss. Frantically, I check my shirt, look for them on road, in dirt, recounting movements in my mind, all in vain, until I find out exactly what I've done. They're hanging on my other thumb.
Lovely. Thank you so much. I can totally relate to that. And yes, now I'm sure we all appreciate a little chuckle right now. It's been a hard start to the new year for a lot of
Absolutely.
so thank you. Appreciate it. Right. Um we usually go till 8:30 and sometimes we can barely squeeze in
I'm gonna talk to Teresa and then I'm gonna watch my show.
Okay.
somebody is I don't know who that is, but so I don't know if there is somebody else who has a shortish story that you'd like to share. This is how, anyway, or we can just chat for a few minutes and say goodnight. So I see Kathy Dana is raising her hand.
Well,
Kat-
Storm got me wanting to read a poem I just wrote, but I have to run grab it. So it'll take me about a few seconds to do it. But shall I do that?
That would be lovely. Kathy, are you, Kathy was for a long time the um, host of the Alameda Story Swap in the island of Alameda, California, and also involved in monthlies with poetry and, open to different kinds of spoken and literary stuff on Alameda. So
Actually, I was the poet laureate of Alameda in 2017. So there you have it. But it'll take me 1 sec to just go grab that poem.
all right, we will wait. That's great. It's so good to see you here. I used to sometimes go over to Alameda to the swap there. I don't know if there's anybody else who has an announcement that and Jean has her hand up. I can't see a lot of people. I need to go to where I can see everybody because I can only see a
A
couple.
quick announcement.
Who's got a quick announcement?
Storm.
Oh, Storm. Okay, Storm, go ahead.
Okay, starting tomorrow, the 24th through the 26th, if anyone happens to want to fly to New York, you can go in person, but also available in part on Zoom. The People's Music Network for Songs of Freedom and Struggle will be having their winter convergence. So if you go to peoplesmusic.org, you can find out all the information. We're an organization of 330 plus people. We've been going for over 40 years. We do things online and in the physical a couple times a year. And if you're interested in peace, social justice, and environmental concerns, then come check us out.
I tried to put that
Yep, that's correct.
website. Okay. Great. Oh, Jean wanted to say she recommends Willie's class.
Yes, and also Stagebridge is doing some other interesting things. Barbara Johnson at Stagebridge also organizes storytelling events outside Stagebridge, beyond the classes. And one she's arranged for this coming Saturday, I believe, is at
Books Inc., is it? The bookstore in Alameda, which is Alameda is a very lively place, I'm sure you'll agree. And it's an interesting approach, and I'm feeling kind of reservations about it, but apparently it's piped through the bookstore, the person who is telling the story. So you can just walk around the bookstore and browse and buy your books and listen to the story. I'm not sure about that sort of divided attention, but I'm going to go and see what it's like. So that's an interesting thing that she has arranged.
At
The other
1:30. 1:30.
1:30 on Saturday.
Mhm.
On Park
Yeah,
Street.
yeah.
Yeah, and Eleanor
And
and
the
I
other thing is,
in America a number of months ago, and there we did get some audience in the little book nook, and also others could hear. So
so that's why I was wondering, some few people do sit down and listen directly.
we did, right? We had
Yeah.
people.
Okay, we'll see. The other thing that she's been doing for years and years, and which I try to do whenever I can, is to go and tell stories at the called a rehab. It's kind of an old people's retirement home for people who are very unfortunate in health and economics and everything. It's called Medical Hill. And we go and tell stories there, and it's kind of discouraging because a lot of the people just don't have all their faculties and they can't really pay attention the whole time. But honestly, they get so little pleasure, and it's just, to me, a very gratifying thing. They love having you come and tell stories, even if they don't get everything, or some of them don't. Some of them are just so grateful, and you know that you've given some pleasure to people who wouldn't otherwise get it. So I thoroughly recommend if you have the time and energy to do that too.
Thank you, Jean. Yes. All right. Where are we?
Storms? Oh, no.
No, Kathy was going to read a
Kathy.
poem.
Oh, yes.
I don't know, Kathy, are you going to read it or are you going to just recite it? You're going to read it.
I'm
Okay.
gonna read it.
Okay.
But I
Well-
have to say too that I took Willie's class in puppets way back when. My friend Richard and I took it, and my sixth graders for years learned the top 3 things you have to do to make your puppets speak well. Anyway, so this poem is inspired by recent events that we've all unhappily been experiencing, called What Up, History. I woke up this morning wondering, how did we get here? I mean, here, now, specifically the state of the world. I don't mean how the universe got here. I know about the Big Bang and all that. I don't mean about how life on our planet got here. I know about evolution and all that. Although I can't help smiling and nodding because scientists still don't know how that first spark of life happened. But I mean, how did we get here? Us, the country, the state of our state. Thich Nhat Hanh says that the present is made up of all the elements of the past. But in grade school, I didn't like studying the past. I didn't like studying history. It seemed boring, like a bunch of bothersome dates I had to get quizzed on, even though they didn't pertain to my little life. And every day, we pledged allegiance to our flag and to the republic for which it stands. And we had our hands on our hearts. And the last words were, with liberty and justice for all. For all. Not some who had more land or money or were white and male, even though that's where we started. Well, it's taken years, decades, millennia, but we've actually come a long way. I've been reading up on history. I see how we got here. And I, for one, am still ready to make our country live up to that pledge I'm still fighting, and damn it, I'm not done fighting. I'm not done. Thank you.
Amen. Amen, Kathy. Thank you. Thank you. All right. I think that brings us to the end of our formal.
Liz,
Yeah. Oh, Donna.
is there
Yeah.
time for one more short story?
Oh, wonderful. Yes, please, Donna.
Okay. Okay, I didn't plan to do this. But I told this, it happened to me just this week. And I told it as at the open mic after Monkey House on Sunday. So I've been trying in between everything else I'm doing to clear the decks, get things out of my house so that my daughter doesn't have to deal with them when I'm gone. Very proud of myself. On Saturday, I went to the Goodwill and took 2 whole bags full. And in the evening, after dinner, I said, you know, I've got enough time, I can do something else. So I looked in the dining room and I knew that people were going to be here for dinner on Thursday. And I said, I'm going to get some things off of the buffet. And there were, from my sister, Karen died in 2021. And I had ever since then not gotten around to giving away her iPhone 6. I think iPhones are now up to 17. And iPad mini that she had had. And so it's about 8 o'clock at night, and I went on my computer. I said, I'm going to put them on a Nextdoor to give them away. So I did. I made up an ad, and I thought, well, I'm probably not going to hear very soon because these are not up to date pieces of equipment. So about 5 minutes later, I hear the little ding that says that I have an email. And a woman has written to me and said she wonders if maybe the phone is still available, and she could even use the iPad mini if that's still there. And I wrote back and I said, well, you're the first. They're yours if you want them. And she said, I could come now if that's okay. And I said, well, you know, I'll be up till 9 or 9:30. And I gave her my address. And so she said, I'm going to come around 9 o'clock. I said, fine. So I get there. So 9 o'clock comes, and she texts me that she's there. And I take the 2 items, and I'm walking down the stairs, and I'm thinking, I'm remembering a couple of decades ago when my husband was still alive, and somebody came to our door with a big sob story, and they needed $20 and they would get it back to us. And at the time, $20 mattered. And we believed her. And of course, we never saw the money again. And I thought, I don't have to worry about that because I'm giving them away. And then I thought, I wonder if she's just, I wonder if this person's a dealer, you know, and they're just going to turn it over. Well, even that's okay. So I opened the door, and here stands this really attractive woman, slender, wrapped. It was cold, and she was wrapped in a sort of thin down coat. And she was looking kind of stricken. And I thought, oh boy, you know, here comes the story. Part of me thought that. The other part of me was happy to be doing what I was doing. So there's 2 voices inside of me. And she says, Oh, I'm so grateful. Thank you. Thank you so much for doing this. It means a lot to me, especially now. And I said, okay, well, great. I'm happy to be doing it. And then I noticed that she put a phone into her pocket. And I said, oh, yeah, well, I'm glad to do it. I noticed you have a phone. She said, oh, it's not for me. It's for my son. He lost his phone. And I said, oh, I get it. It's kind of a little life lesson. He has to limp along with an iPhone 6, because that's what's available when you lose yours. And she said, exactly. And but it'll just really be helpful to us. And then she said, and it's even more, it really matters more right now because of what's just happened. And I said, what happened? And turned out that she and her mother had just bought an electric car. They were going to share it. But she didn't, for the first time it needed to be charged. She had no idea how to charge a phone. And so she couldn't figure out how to get the thing in there. And next to her was a guy charging his car who obviously knew what he was doing, a big, strong guy. And she very politely went over and tried to get his attention to get help. And he looked at her out of the side of his eyes, immediately went back to his phone, kept scrolling and scrolling while he was charging, and he was out of there. And she was, 8:30, 8:45, or whatever it was at night. And then a couple of women came along and they had groceries and they saw that she was looking kind of bereft. They put down their groceries and lo and behold, they helped her get it in there. So then she sits in the car while it's charging, scrolls through her phone, sees my ad, and here we are. So here's the thing. We ended up out there for about a good half hour. She saw my cat looking from behind me. We started, talking about cats not getting out. And she said, oh, yes, I learned that lesson. And now I live on Spalding Street and there's coyotes. And she told how her cat and her dogs sleep on her bed and they're her free eat. And I told how my cat goes on my chest and grooms me first thing in the morning. But we went on. And she told me about her mother and how her mother exercises. And I evangelized about water exercise, which I'm a big, really helps glue me together. We just went on and on. And she said, finally, we decided, we really had to go. And then she looked over and said, is that your lemon tree? I said, yes. And I sent her home with an armful of, Meyer lemons. And we talked about squeezing lemons into our water first thing in the morning. So the next morning I woke up and I was just flooded with the memory of this connection that I had had with this woman. And I try to live my life by I have these mottos, and one of them is connecting. And I thought, wow, boy, did I check that box last night. So that's it.
Thank you so much, Donna. And what a perfect ending. What a perfect ending for our evening, because my heart is full because we've been connecting with each other. And even you know, without being in the same room together, I feel so connected to all of you and that our stories connect us. So thank you again to Willie for being our featured teller and to all the rest of our tellers tonight. And do come back next month and maybe you've got a story if you didn't tell one tonight. Please, when you get our email, sign up and we really look forward to seeing you in a month. So let's
Thanks for this, Liz.
and yeah, let's end our video.